Everybody, welcome. Special edition Knowles 24/7's On the Bench podcast. My name is Trey Rowland, and I am here. Got a special bench because it's just me and the guru, me and Zach Blostein, and we are going to get you boys and girls caught up on everything that there is to know about official visits, crystal balls, multiple balls dropped. Very exciting stuff. What's going on with commits? It's everything, Zach. Like this, it's funny because I've seen some sentiment on the board. And if you're not on Knowles 24/7's board, figure it out and fix it because this is the time that nobody cares about recruiting. I think that's changing, dude. We're in kind of like we're in the hot boy season of recruiting right now because the intel and the scoop is coming fast and furious. How are you feeling, man?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get some of the sentiment. I mean, I think I looked into it the other day. Like, it's been almost 5 months since Florida State's gotten a commitment in the 2025 class, which is crazy to think about, right?
That is.
You have to go back all the way to January with Javion Hilson's commitment or flip from Alabama. So I get the sentiment that there's been, kind of that lack of interest, but things are certainly heating up, like you said, Trey. It's gotten busy as of late with all these official visitors, campers, all this stuff that's been going on in June. It's kind of crescendoing into this month of July where we're probably going to see a bunch of decisions getting made by FSU's top targets.
And it is a crescendo. Wonderful word. Because Mike Norvell, he's okay with going through like a drought because he likes to stack them all in and have these like stacked weekends. And June is really where this staff, June and July is where the class really seems to pick up momentum. So before we get to that, let's do some house cleaning. If you guys are listening to this podcast, I hope you have a nice big old fat glass of Chattanooga whiskey by your side. The delicious, most delectable craft whiskey here, there, or anywhere. That 111 proof, that's what you need. I hope you're enjoying your nice Father's Day. I'm sure Mike Norvell is enjoying his Father's Day with his wife, his daughter, his two sons, Mario and Billy. I'm sure he's just having a nice glass of whiskey, and you should too. That 111 strength, that's just perfect. Hits the right spot. If you're a little fancy boy like Brendan, they've got like founders editions and all these different sort of casks, and they put the type of craft and time into their hooch that a discerning customer like you deserves. Why shortchange yourself and go for that other bathtub swill? Be the best version of yourself, and that can only happen if you drink Chattanooga whiskey. And as I always say, if you're drinking whiskey, why not sell your house? Just go crazy, man. Suck it down and just sell your house or buy a house or buy two houses. You can't do that on your own because you're drunk off Chattanooga whiskey. So you need the Turner Group to help you. The most professional and best real estate outfit in the state of Florida. They're based out of Central Florida. That is the Turner Group, but they can help you anywhere. South, North, Panhandle, anywhere. They will help you buy, sell. They will give you the best advice. They will get you on an investment that will move your life forward in a positive direction so you can start drinking your Chattanooga whiskey happily instead of with sorrow because you're just missing out on all the opportunity that's right there at your fingertips. But all you had to do was call the Turner Group. So get drunk on Chattanooga whiskey and sell your house with the Turner Group. Your life will get better immediately. Not bad, right? I love doing these ad reads.
Awesome.
I think we just sold a lot of whiskey and we just signed a lot of mortgages, brother. I feel good. Let's talk about official visitors. Stacked weekend. Nice weekend with some very intriguing prospects. There were, I believe, 7 prospects on campus. The first one I want to talk about is wide receiver Kaleb Lockett. I find this to be a very talented prospect and one that Florida State has been connected to for quite some time. How did his visit go, and where did the Knowles stand?
Yeah, well, this interest between Kaleb Lockett and Florida State really stems from his trip that he took to FSU in March. It was the first visit he's ever made to Tallahassee, and it kind of cemented Florida State as a real player in his recruitment. I've always viewed, despite that, visit going super well in the spring, I've always viewed his recruitment as an uphill battle for Florida State just because he's a 5-star wide receiver from the state of Texas.
Ooh.
Both the Longhorns and the in-state Aggies want him. And it's just, usually that's not a recipe for success if you're recruiting a guy from that region. But I heard some positive things throughout the weekend, just checking in on how things were going. I mentioned this on the board, and I know some people have some PTSD from previous cycles, but I mentioned, like, I think FSU feels like they have a real shot in his recruitment, and this is not me like projecting them to win out, because that's not, I'm not close to doing that, and I probably don't envision myself doing so, but Kaleb Lockett definitely views FSU in a higher light after seeing them, for an extensive period of time on the official visit. He got a chance to talk with FSU's receiver room, many members of it, including Malik Benson, Hakeem Williams, and Jalen Brown. Something he mentioned was that I guess some schools were negatively recruiting Florida State, saying that they don't have a ton of guys that are from out of the region of the state of Florida. I guess
like too many Florida athletes on the roster. That's a negative. Okay, interesting.
That's what he mentioned. He goes, people are in my ear about that. And he's like, well, Malik Benson's from Kansas, and then they have some other guys from Georgia and whatever, right? Like, we know that there's a diverse,
diverse geographies converging in one. Absolutely.
Yeah. So he mentioned, that question being answered. He said all of his questions kind of got answered about Florida State. So we'll see where things go. I think with all these kids, you really have to remember that NIL is a huge factor, whether it's being talked about or not publicly. And obviously for a 5-star receiver, that's going to be the case. FSU is competitive in that market. So we'll see what happens. He's going to Texas this upcoming weekend. And then I would expect him to kind of get into decision making mode. We'll see where it goes from there. But I do think FSU is a true contender. I don't think they're an afterthought. But I guess my takeaway from the weekend is that, I'm not projecting him to end up in the class, but they stand in a better light in his recruitment.
Depends how many Lamborghinis Texas has posed directly side by side on his recruitment next week. If NIL is a factor, like you said, man, I totally get the skepticism, but everything the kid said about Florida State has legitimately been good. But the way Texas is recruiting, the type of guys they have in the quarterback room, the strength of their NIL, we'll see. I like it. Positive, though. And Zach will keep you guys up to date. Let's talk about another 5-star prospect. This one is from Manchester, Georgia. This is 5-star defensive lineman Justus Terry. Justus Terry, who was committed to Georgia, now committed to USC. I don't know if he committed during that weird flash of like commitments to USC. That wasn't totally like weird at all. But anyway, he was on campus. And this is a guy that's also been like, I know a lot of people on the board. They see 5-star. They see the type of schools they were committed to. They immediately like write them off in their head. Should fans be doing that with Justus Terry, or is Florida State really in it? Be honest. Be honest to the people.
No. Here's my take on this. I think he's going to flip to Georgia eventually. Speaking of NIL being important, Justus Terry was part of that contingent of Southeast players that randomly all of a sudden committed to USC on one weekend.
Wow, this totally coincidence, happenstance.
Los Angeles just, the city just killed it.
Beautiful city,
they're ready to play on that awesome defense. No, so I think Justus Terry is most likely going to flip to Georgia. But if there is a second school behind Georgia, I think it's Florida State, for whatever that means, right? Like I'm not going to bet against Georgia for a 5-star defensive lineman in their state. But FSU is, I guess, if you want to say, in the picture. But I view him, I view FSU's chances with Justus Terry as slim.
Yeah, that might be one where we're not putting in a crystal ball now, but maybe a couple of years from now, if my guy goes in the transfer portal, we're in that poll transfer portal position, which I'm sure fans love to hear when we're talking about defensive linemen.
Yeah.
All right. I appreciate the honesty, Zach. This is why Noles 24/7. You got to come to the bench to get the straight talk. No fluffing, guys. No sunshine pumping. We're telling you the truth because that's what you deserve. Let's talk about, this was a new name, and I don't know if it just caught my eye because I don't know if I'd seen this name before or just it's a fun name to say, but that's New Iberia, Louisiana, and LSU commitment, the 4-star cornerback Jaboree, Antoine, or is it Jaboree? I don't know. I don't know how much Cajun like spunk I want to put on it. Either way, it's a guy that's based out of Louisiana as a defensive back, committed to LSU. He's at Florida State. I don't think, has he ever visited Florida State before this official visit?
I don't remember, honestly. I don't think so. He might have, and I'm just
Wild.
forgetting about it. But no, I think he got offered earlier this year, and there were some talks about him making it to campus. But I think this was his first ever visit. He has some kind of connection, like some mutual friends, I guess, with some members of FSU's roster. More specifically, Ja'Kai Douglas and Jalen Lucas, like that family he knows well. So there's that tie. Pat Surtain's done a good job. Pat Surtain obviously played his high school football in Louisiana, so there's that connection. You know, like with
Be honest
Georgia,
with the people. Be honest with the people, Zach.
With Georgia and 5-star defensive lineman from the Peach State, I'm not gonna sit here and predict a flip for a 4-star defensive back that is an LSU commit in the state of Louisiana. But, I think FSU and Miami are both kind of in the picture as potential flip options. But like I said, not predicting anything and probably won't. But FSU did a nice job with him throughout the weekend. And just a caveat on all these guys, I try to gather information in the days after their official visits. So new information could come to light that makes me feel better or worse about Florida State's standing. But as of right now, just initial takeaway, I wouldn't project him to flip to Florida State. I think that's, an uphill battle with him being committed to LSU. But we'll kind of track where things go in that recruitment because there are those, connections that I mentioned to FSU.
Yeah, this feels like these guys are in they came for the free photo op kind of category right now. But I mean, they're all 5-star, they're all upper level dudes. But it feels like when you get those higher level Mississippi prospects, defensive linemen from Alabama, when the in-state school offers, it feels like you always want this type of talent on campus, and you want to shoot your shot. You might as well. But these seem to be long shots unless the boys put their recruiting pants on and go crazy. And if so, Zach will let you guys know. But we just want to temper expectations. Now, I think we're starting to get to the realm of the more realistic to actually come to FSU prospects that officially visited. I want to get to defensive back, Monroe, North Carolina, 4-star safety prospect, Jordan Young. 6'4". Oh no, he's 6 foot, 184 pounds, versatile playmaker, a guy that's also been linked to Florida State for a while. Where does Florida State sit with Jordan Young, and who is their biggest rival in that recruitment?
Yeah, it's definitely Clemson as their biggest rival for Jordan Young out of, like you said, North Carolina. The biggest thing with him, I talked to him before his FSU visit just about, what Florida State could do to catch up to the school that is in the lead for him. And like I said, that is Clemson. He visited there the first weekend of June. They did an excellent job, as they usually do that first week of kind of, cementing their lead in a recruitment or
didn't shut it down though. That was big.
Did not shut it down, which is a good sign. But I definitely do think it's those two schools, FSU and Clemson. He does take visits to NC State and Michigan this week over the next, couple days and then into the weekend. But I think FSU made up some ground. I do want to continue to check on just how much ground they made up. But he said as much in the interview afterwards. We'll kind of see. FSU's safety board is interesting, and I mentioned this on the last podcast. But I think a lot of it will come down to kind of who jumps into the mix first. I still feel good about FSU's chances with a guy like Zay Thomas, who we'll get into later on. He visits next weekend out of South Florida, and then there are a number of guys that visited the weekend prior at the safety spot that maybe I feel better about than Jordan Young. But this is a recruitment that I could see Florida State making a move for. He said he has a great relationship with Pat Surtain. He kind of likes what FSU's plan would be for him within their defensive scheme.
Do we? And to me, this is there's clearly other positions, like maybe the one we're about to talk about next, where the recruiting over the years during the Mike Norvell tenure has been a little, I guess, questionable, spotty. To me, especially since Pat Surtain's been on staff, I don't foresee that at defensive back at all. Are you worried about the caliber of class that Florida State gets at defensive back this season with all of the prospects that they've had? Because I'm really not. I think it's going to shake out just fine. But what do you think? You're the expert.
Yeah, I'm not worried. Florida State's not worried. They have an absolutely stacked and young defensive back room on the roster right now, and they feel really good about that room, both at corner and at safety. So no, that's, if there's a position that I'm the least worried about when it comes to Florida State's recruiting efforts, it's probably that. That, and I mean, if you look at offense, maybe running back, or even I'm not worried about Florida State's defensive back recruiting. It's going to be interesting this year just because I think the numbers are going to be less, and I think when you look kind of regionally, the high end, Southeast defensive backs, there aren't a ton of them, and a lot of them are kind of have been
spoken
trending
for.
Yeah. So no, I'm not overly worried, and I think they'll kind of get who they get, and they'll be okay with the guys that they land.
Well, Zach, you sound way too positive and comfortable right now. So let's talk about linebackers. And let's talk about the linebacker that was on campus from Spanaway, Washington. Holy hell, that's far away.
Yeah.
4-star linebacker Zaydrius Rainey Sale. He was a Washington commitment. Nixed that when Kalen DeBoer went to Alabama. This is a dude people like. You want to talk about fans on the message board rolling their eyes. Like, oh, this kid's from Mississippi. This kid's from Alabama. This kid is from Washington State, like the furthest away from Tallahassee that you could get in the continental United States, unless we recruit somebody from like Anchorage. But this is a dude that makes the trips to Florida State. He's always had positive things to say about Florida State. What do you think about Florida State's realistic chances of pulling a linebacker, an elite blue chip linebacker from the state of Washington?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few important notes here. So there's an obvious tie with Derek Ray, FSU's general manager, to that region of the United States. He used to work out there. It's where he's from. And if you think back a couple of cycles ago when they landed a guy like Blake Nicholson, who's from that northern part of California, same kind of region there, and that was a Derek Ray / Randy Shannon recruitment. I think they'll try to do similar this year with a guy like Zaydrius Rainey Sale. And this isn't some guy that they've never seen work out. Like, this is a guy that came to camp last year, then came to a game, was like, I mean, we were told that he was committing to Florida State in December. We all threw in crystal balls. I think the main dynamic, which is maybe the most important note here, is his mom being comfortable with him leaving home. She's very close to him. Obviously, just that dynamic is super important, and he mentioned that in the post-visit interview. Our guys did a good job kind of asking about that situation, because that was what kind of halted his original commitment to FSU and led to him committing to the hometown Washington Huskies. He has a top 3 right now, and that's Washington, FSU, and UCLA. I think all 3 of those schools have different viewpoints on just where they're at in their recruitment. But I think Florida State is the school that I'll say ZRS, because that's a good abbreviation for his name that we go by on the board. But yeah, ZRS. I think he likes Florida State a ton. I think like he's all the way sold from his viewpoint. I think more so it's about selling the mom on being okay with him leaving home, and not just leaving home, but like you said earlier, leaving that far away from home, going all the way across the country to the Southeast. So yeah, I think that's an important dynamic that we'll be keeping an eye on, and that's something I'm going to be digging on personally, just to know if kind of with those situations, you want to know if he has the blessing of his mom to kind of make that move. I think if I hear something like that, if that's kind of checked off, I'd feel really good about Florida State's chances with him, which I know is surprising, right, with the prospect from that far away. But like I said, he has those ties to this staff, and it's not like this is his first visit. Like he's been a consistent visitor. So yeah, I feel pretty good about FSU's chances, but monitoring that specific dynamic with his mom.
I like that. ZRS. I'd also accept Zaydrius. Yeah. I think that's a pretty sweet name. Zach, you're on mom watch for the next couple weeks. Can you handle that? You're on Zaydrius mom watch. We need
used to him, yeah.
I feel like Norvell. I don't know how Shannon is, but I feel like Norvell's good with moms. Like, I feel with the family dynamic, like if the mom is the one that you have to crack, I feel pretty good about the chances with this staff.
I agree. Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the younger guys. I know that people swoon when Norvell wears like the tight zip downs or whatever, but I think he's got a good mom recruiting game. What do you think?
I do too. I think that's probably the strength. If you're comparing, the mom versus dad, I think I'm taking his
He's a
chances
mom
with the
guy.
mom. Yeah.
He like pulls the LeBron on the sideline when the mom's on the visit, like Happy International Women's Day, and they go, "Oh, thank you, Michael, thank you."
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Okay, well, his mom recruiting skills are going to be put to the test. Obviously, we will keep you up to date on that. Let's talk about a guy that's a little closer to home. Pembroke Pines, West Broward, 4-star wide receiver Joshua Moore, 6'4", 205. This is a guy. I don't know if he's 4-star by the composite or if we have him as a 4-star on the just Knowles 24/7. But this is a kid that everybody really wants and is like consistently, I'd say, underrated right now. Like this is a very highly coveted wide receiver prospect, right, Zach?
Yeah, I mentioned that on the board to our subscribers this week. Like, I don't really care about rankings, but I would not pay attention to the rankings when you're kind of considering the priority list of FSU's kind of receiver targets in the 2025 class. Like Josh Moore is right up there, if not the top receiver target for FSU this cycle. They, Mike Norvell and Ron Dugans absolutely love this kid. He actually plays just down the road from me over here in Pembroke Pines, and yeah, he's super impressive. I mean, Dane could tell you all about how he fits perfectly into the 9 position within FSU.
Oh God, we get him going. He loves to talk about his 9s.
Yeah, so no, he is a fit there, and that's definitely something that he talked about. But I've heard a lot of intel on this recruitment specifically, maybe more so than the other ones we've talked about. I think this is an FSU and Florida battle. I've seen a lot of those this cycle, and he's supposed to, or he's scheduled to head to Georgia next weekend. I think that visit's very much up in the air. So we'll kind of see where things go on that. But I was told today that they might cancel that visit. I feel pretty good about Florida State's chances. I think they're kind of fully invested in this recruitment. They want to win out. I think he makes the decision like relatively soon too, like maybe within the next couple weeks before June closes out. Obviously decision timelines always kind of shift, but that's the current timeline from what I've heard. So checking in with a few sources, later this afternoon.
If the Georgia visit does not go as planned this week, would it just be an open weekend for him, or who's another contender to get to see Mr. Moore again, or for the first time?
Yeah, I think it would be open. I haven't heard of another school possibly getting scheduled at this point. He did visit Miami. That's another school that is in the mix, but I just haven't heard as much about Miami being a big factor in that recruitment as I've heard with FSU and UF. But they did host him earlier in the month of June.
Are you close to balling? You close to maybe like
I mean, I'm
a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. I think UF is actually feeling pretty good about their chances with him after his OB there last weekend. So I do want to keep checking on kind of how both sides feel. But I feel like Florida State just very much wants to land Josh Moore. And yeah, I feel like they've kind of zeroed in on him as a top, if not the top target, like I said, at the receiver spot. So I feel good. But I do want to continue to check before I go in with a crystal ball prediction.
Absolutely. The donk has his man. Will he close? We will find out. Wide receiver Malik Clark. This is the last one of the official visitors from this past weekend, I believe. Rock Hill, South Carolina, 4-star wide receiver prospect. Malik Clark. This is a guy that I think is like just kind of popping up on the radar out of nowhere. Where did this recruitment come from, and where does it stand right now?
Yeah, so what happened was during the evaluation period in May, Florida State did some interesting things. They sent some off-field staffers on the road to go kind of stop in at schools that maybe they have connections to. So an example of that was like in South Florida, newly hired defensive line assistant Phil Simpson was doing some stops down there. Another one that is in relation to the Malik Clark recruitment is Ryan Bartow. He was sent out in the Carolinas to do some stops, and Malik Clark plays at I believe Rock Hill High School.
Yeah.
Rock Hill High School, and Ryan Bartow stopped there. And soon after that stop, after seeing him in person for the first time, Malik Clark, they extended him a scholarship offer, and then soon after that, he was scheduled for an official visit in June. I had not heard a ton on this recruitment, so I'm not speaking from being super informed on the latest happenings here, but just from viewing it from afar, like I think it was an uphill battle for Florida State, just in the sense that they don't have this long established relationship as some of the schools that are more local to Malik Clark, like a North Carolina, which is the crystal ball favorite for him, or even a South Carolina. But he mentioned in our post visit article that FSU would probably close the gap with those schools. We'll see if that kind of backs up with what I hear on the other end of things. So not expressing a ton of confidence, but also with the caveat that I haven't heard a bunch about this visit yet, and just how it went on Florida State's side.
I don't know if these kids have like PR agents now, but like there are like some phrases that like close the gap, set the standard,
set the bar.
Set the bar.
Yeah. Like, I think that's a Newbergism. Like Josh did a good job of kind of realizing that was something that a lot of kids were saying on that. If you were setting the bar that first weekend of June, like that is not a good thing, because like all these kids are going on these visits, and the bar just keeps getting set higher and higher. Like,
dream school package deal, dude. It's the isms, man. I don't know, man, but they're good. I feel like they just tell these kids like, hey, if you're lost, like if it's 6 a.m. and these guys have these microphones in your face, say one of these 4 things, and it'll make the headline, and you can get the hell out of there. Okay, so we close the gap. Well, Zach will actually follow up with some real deal reporting and intel to see how much we close the gap with wide receiver Malik Clark. All right. Crystal ball action. We teased it, and we're not a bunch of teases. We're going to give you the balls that you want. Let's talk about the first one. Defensive back Larian Clardy, the Squirrel. I believe the Squirrel is the nickname.
Yep.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. Crystal balls for him. Local prospect. A dude that was actually, I think, riding with Mike in his, what does he have? Like what is Mike pushing around these days? It's not like a Maybach, is it?
I think it is a Maybach. Yeah, I think.
That's good for him, man. Very impressive. So the Squirrel and Mike in the Maybach. Crystal balls have been secured. We feel really good about this pretty local prospect that's also extremely talented.
Yeah. Like I said, the FSU's defensive backboard is kind of, it's just first come, first serve. And I just feel like Florida State did an excellent job with Squirrel, Ladarian Clardy, on his official visit to campus last weekend. Looking at the rest of his contenders, yes, there's some SEC schools like a Mississippi State or Ole Miss, but I'm not viewing them as like on the same tier as FSU within this recruitment right now. The one thing that could throw a wrench in this recruitment is Miami possibly being a factor. Although his official visit there is scheduled all the way at the end of July, so we'll see if he kind of takes his recruitment that long. I would expect Florida State, as they kind of are expected to go on a run of commitments in the early part of July, like that, there'll probably be some pressure to kind of join the class, the defensive back class specifically, for a guy like Clardy. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, the intel coming out of the FSU visit with Clardy last weekend was super positive. I mean, he admitted to me that Florida State was his outright leader, and yeah, just backing that up with what I heard behind the scenes, all kind of the same thing. And yeah, that made me lead to enter a crystal ball for Mr. Squirrel to FSU.
Which is a rare occasion. Zach is very methodical with these. If he thinks the Squirrel's going to be a null, that's some high stuff. This next one really caught the eyes of everybody. And when you're talking about like a 5-star offensive tackle prospect, that's always big news.
Yeah.
Crystal ball's in for 5. He is a 5-star, right, Zach?
Yes, he is.
5-star offensive tackle Josh Petty. Is this a thing that's actually going to happen? Because that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm putting in a crystal ball. So
we think. I don't want to put the pressure on you.
Yeah, I'm projecting it to happen. That's fair to say. We don't have not every puzzle piece is placed in this recruitment, right? Like he still has his official visit set to Florida State for this next weekend coming up, the June 21st to the 23rd weekend. I think Ohio State is probably the biggest contender to FSU. Tennessee's also in there, along with, he's a high academic kid, so Stanford is in the mix as well. But yeah, I mean, they're reporting on this, and just shouting out someone that's done a good job on our network. Anna Adams has done a great job of kind of reporting on the family dynamic here. But as many people know, Josh Petty's older sister, Olivia, is scheduled to enroll at Florida State as a college freshman this upcoming August. And that is, really helping FSU's chances with Petty, just because they've always talked about going to school together. That's not the only thing that they're doing right, though, right? Like, if it was just that, I probably wouldn't have entered a crystal ball.
Even if he was a single child, I'd still like FSU's chances here.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely helping them. But, I mean, Mike Norvell's done an awesome job here, and so is Alex Atkins. Certain guys appreciate Atkins' approach to recruiting. It's not, we've talked at length about this, but he's just, he's not going to hound you, right? It's kind of every now and again he'll hit you up, and I think Petty appreciates that approach. It'll be important for FSU to kind of nail his OV this upcoming weekend, making sure that all questions are answered. Like I said, he's a high academic kid, so I'm sure he's going to want to know his plan for his major. So all that stuff, all those meetings of an official visit will be important for Petty. But if everything checks out, I feel good about FSU's chances to close. Like I said, the other contenders are also in there. They're places that he saw in June. But I like the way it kind of sets up with FSU as the last visit before he likely makes a decision in either July or August.
If it's a kid that likes like the low hassle recruiting style and a high academic dude, you got to feel really good about just with the way, like you said, Zach, how FSU structures their OVs. It's information heavy. Yeah. And when it clicks with the kids, it really clicks with them. The fact that he went through this official visit gauntlet and Florida State is still being consistently mentioned at the top, that is extremely positive. I think I'm not going to jinx it. So good luck, Mike and the boys. It's a big one. All right, last crystal ball, Shamar Arnoux. Defensive back, newer name, but very, very impressive from what you guys have seen of this prospect, right, Zach?
Yeah. And to be fair, this wasn't my crystal ball. This is Brendan's. So,
take it with, it's not a serious,
salt,
absolutely. Fake ball. Yeah.
Yeah. Just talking to Brendan. I don't know if this is like he heard that, Shamar Arnoux is trending to FSU kind of thing. I think he's kind of projecting it out. The development of this recruitment is basically, Shamar Arnoux, he's a 3-star or composite 4-star cornerback out of Carrollton High School in the state of Georgia. He worked out at FSU's elite camp last week and was awesome. I think he was probably my top overall performer on the day, and FSU kind of felt similarly. So they turned up the heat with him, set up an OV with him for the last weekend of June. So that's coming up in just a few days. And he was at Auburn this past weekend. It sounds like he's kind of moving up their priority list. So it sounds like it'll probably be an FSU versus Auburn battle. And Brendan just projecting it out with FSU getting the last visit. I think he felt good about that. I haven't heard anything definitive there, like just about, FSU being a leader or anything at this point, but I'm interested to see kind of how things go this upcoming weekend for Shamar and FSU before I kind of enter the mix with a prediction there.
You like to know concrete things. I do. I like Brendan's approach because, dude, it's very predictive, and
I appreciate. Yeah,
so do I, because you can see the clear path. Staff likes him, works out for staff. Staff sets up last official visit. Everything is positive, positive, positive. I like the reading the tea leaves type. The true predictive crystal ball is a dying breed these days.
True.
Good on you for Sonone for bringing that back. I do like that you had to explain, this is not a Zach crystal ball, by the way.
And I appreciate, like you said, I appreciate that kind of crystal ball too. I think with me being the main recruiting guy, sometimes it's harder for me to do that because people take, me putting in a crystal ball as, the kids, on the verge of committing to Florida State.
Wait a minute. Nobody would ever be that black and white and concrete and recruiting with 17-year-old prospects. Never.
No. So it's I appreciate that approach, and it's cool that Brendan gets to do that. So yeah, I think I'm a little
I'd
I'm
love to
jealous.
do that too if
Yeah,
I could.
I'm jealous. No, but yeah, I think it's fair reasoning with him. I wouldn't push back against it. Just kind of waiting for more information on my side.
We'll have to get you like a pseudonym so you could just have your for the love of the game crystal
Yeah,
balls
I'll
back,
do it.
man.
I'll do it under your account.
Yeah, oh, yeah, dude, trust me, nobody will care. You're fine there.
Yeah.
Nobody will take any of that seriously. Go crazy, my dude. All right. Those are the crystal balls. Those are the guys that officially visited. We're going to talk about all the official visitors that are coming up this week, and I think we've got 5 important names to know. But before we do that, there's a lot of interesting because it's not only the prospects that Florida State's interested in coming to Florida State, it's prospects that Florida State's interested in that are going to other places. So we've got some intel for you there. And I want to start out with the tastiest nug and the most interesting situation. In Florida State, they're very confident in their quarterback recruiting, and it's always worked out for them, in my opinion, so far. What is going on with long-term FSU quarterback commit, the only one for the 2025 class, Mandarin 4-star Tramell Jones? This has been something that's been brewing in the background. He continues to go to the University of Florida's campus. He's always shown up in Gainesville. He's always telling the Florida State coaching staff, but it kind of feels like this is a game of chicken, and I don't know necessarily why FSU staff is being so laissez-faire about it. Like, in my opinion, and I don't know if you have the same one, we need to figure out what's really going on here, and what have you heard about it, and what's your opinion on the recruitment?
Yeah. Well, the most recent development with Tramell Jones and FSU and Florida is that he was in Gainesville this past Thursday.
Again, yeah.
Yeah, for their OTA workout with the team, and that obviously caused a lot of uproar when I posted it, but yeah, I'm kind of with you, Trey. I posted this, on the site in conjunction with that report. Like, I feel like Florida State, it's at the point now. Like, I mean, your quarterback one of the class, the only guy you're planning on taking, is still visiting a rival school, and it's not like it's some rival school that has some awesome situation. They're equal, record wise. All
No,
this stuff, right?
Chet Bob's on the
Yeah,
hot seat, man, but he's still
exactly.
pulling your quarterback over and
Yeah,
over again.
yeah. So that's a red flag on its own, in my opinion. Just that dynamic, and then yeah, I mean, from Florida State's side, I feel like there's two different things to this. In my opinion, they should go ahead and start hosting official visitors at quarterback with some of their backup options, which they've done a good job of kind of building out those backup options. But yeah, I think that would be my approach. I'm not saying Florida State's going to do that. The other dynamic to this is I think FSU is not like insanely keen on worrying about 2025 quarterback recruiting. They feel good about what's currently on the roster and the two young arms in Brocklin and Luke Kromenhoek, even a guy like the walk-on Trevor Jackson, who they got as like a composite 4-star walk-on quarterback last year. They feel good about him. There's a scenario where this plays out where they don't take a quarterback in 2025, and I don't think they'd be against that. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's definitely a scenario that I've heard as a possibility if things go south. But to be clear, they want to keep Tramell in the class.
They've invested a lot of time
Yeah.
into the kid, and the kid keeps every single update I see of his performance at these workouts has been very positive. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like it's not the same like as if like a Luke Kromenhoek was going, like we were going through the situation last year. I don't think the situation's that dire, but this is a very good prospect that you've spent a lot of time in. It just feels different than like the Chris Parsons situation to me a couple years ago, because there's not another guy that you were really close to getting a commitment from that you eventually did with like a Brock Glenn. Like it feels different to me than that, but is it very similar? Am I looking too much into it?
It's not the same dynamic, because if you remember with that cycle, they were trying to add a second quarterback to their class with
Oh,
Chris
that's correct. Yeah.
committed. And that kind of ruffled, feathers within Parson and his camp. FSU's kind of always said they're rolling with Tramell Jones, and just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why that you continue to flirt with Florida. it's a confusing recruitment, and you put it well at the beginning. Like, it's just from Florida State's perspective, I feel like you have more leverage than Florida here. And in relation to this kid in his camp, like, I think Tramell's a really good player. You brought that up. He's continually, performed better at every setting. I've watched him a ton of times this offseason. He's been awesome. So I'm, not trying to say he's not a great player, but like, we at some point you got to figure out what your quarterback recruiting is going to be like in this class. And you probably don't want to leave summer without a clear answer to that question. And that's kind of my take on it. But that could be completely different from Florida State thinks or what they're going to do. But the messaging I got, like I said, is just they're not overly worried about, whether it goes one way or the other. They want to keep Tramell in the class, but they do have backup options that they can turn to. And if and when that time comes, we'll be the first to report on those backup options and whether there is some development there as to whether FSU can get them to campus.
It's just interesting to me because I know that recruits have mentioned Mike Norvell saying like, hey, we're going to win either here, like with you or without you, which is a very powerful statement. So I don't know if it's a situation like that, if it's a situation where maybe the information that they're getting from those around his camp isn't like the threat from Florida isn't as serious. I don't know. To me, for a school that likes to stack recruiting momentum in the summer, and that's what they've done over and over. And you got to give Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars the benefit of the doubt on quarterback recruiting. They've done some stuff that people have questioned, and it has worked out 100% in their favor. They flipped the room. So you got to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But for a program that really relies on summer recruiting momentum, what better way to kneecap that than to lose your, like, what's supposed to be the linchpin of a recruiting class? And it may not be this year based on what's already on the roster and the quality of like quarterbacks overall in state. But what greater way to kneecap momentum than to lose your quarterback prospect? Potentially, nobody's predicting that this is going to happen, but to lose your quarterback prospect to an in-state rival that's really sucked on the field for the past couple of years. And you also, you lost a 2026 defensive back commit, Jalen Waters, the kid from Armwood, which Armwood is Armwood, but he decommitted from you and committed right to Billy Napier and the Gators as well. It's just an interesting trend line. When do you think we're going to get some resolution on the Tramell Jones situation?
I would expect it comes after his official visit to FSU this upcoming weekend. That's always been, the plan for him to take that trip on the last weekend of June. He actually heads to Elite 11 this weekend. It's kind of wild that with this kid that's been committed for over a year now, like we're instead of talking about him getting ready, gearing up for Elite 11, we're talking about a potential flip situation. And Trey, you bring up a good point. I think the lost part in all this is the PR hit. I know some people think that it doesn't matter, but like Tramell Jones plays on one of the best 7-on-7 organizations in the country in South Florida Express. One of your top wide receiver targets is super close with him, and Vernell Brown the third, a guy that you're also bringing in next weekend alongside Tramell Jones, and a guy that a lot of people think might be trending to Florida. So if Tramell heads that direction, like, does that not just help UF in that race as well? Not saying it's a difference, right? Like, I'm not saying that Tramell Jones going one way or another is the difference for either school, but it probably helps to some degree. And then, like you said, it's not good PR for your quarterback commit as you're trying to build momentum in the 2025 class to flip to an in-state rival that's kind of down in the dumps, at least on the field. So yeah, I think that's kind of something that's getting lost in the discussion of all this a little bit.
In Florida State, like the way that they recruit, they build momentum, they build great relationships, and they get commitments in the summer. And then for a lot of these kids, they're hanging on for dear life in December. It's just it's a worry for this specific recruitment. I don't think it's make or break for the program, and we'll see what happens if anything does. It's just I don't know why it's allowed to get to this point.
Yeah,
It seems unnecessary. It's not super over. I'm not freaking out about it because I think they're going to be fine either way. It just seems the whole thing's unnecessary, I think. But Maybe it'll work out for the best. Zach will keep you updated. We will get resolution on this in the next upcoming weeks. But just another data point and just a weird recruitment, dude.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about one that's a little bit more straightforward. That's defensive back prospect Onis Konanbanny. Does Florida State have staying power in this recruitment? I think he was the only visitor on that first weekend. He was the dude that was basically earmarked. I think all his crystal balls are to like Tennessee. And he said some awesome stuff about Florida State. Jalen Ramsey, I think, got on the phone with this prospect. Isn't that right, Zach?
Yeah, he did. That was a cool thing that Pat Surtain set up on that official visit weekend, the first weekend of June. And yeah, I mean, every update that I've read, everything that I've heard behind the scenes surrounding his recruitment is that Florida State's kind of still right there. He called FSU his top school leaving that FSU visit. Like you said, he went to a Tennessee 7-on-7 event, said Tennessee was right there with Florida State. Goes to North Carolina for an official visit. Well, it's UNC and Florida State. So there's a common trend here that, Florida State is that top contender alongside another school. He just went to LSU, which I actually view as the biggest contender in this recruitment aside from FSU. So I'm really interested to see kind of what he says coming out of that trip. Corey Raymond is the defensive backs coach there, and he's done an excellent job in that recruitment. So, we'll kind of see what happens there. But yeah, I do think FSU has staying power, to answer your question, Trey. Like, surprisingly, they do, because this wasn't, if you look at a lot of the trends of previous cycles, and this isn't me projecting, him to end up at FSU, but more so just like the trends of previous cycles with guys that visit earlier on in June. So, lower like
by themselves, dude. It wasn't a loaded weekend, first weekend. Like the staying power to me is what's eye-opening. And I think it's probably what's eye-opening to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think they just nailed it. They got his mom on the visit, which was huge. She lives overseas in the UK.
Recruiting.
Yes,
Mom recruiting.
And speaking about that, like Norvell did an excellent job. He mentioned that in the update with the UNC site after his OB there, like Mike Norvell is the difference for, as to why Florida State's still right there. So yeah, interested to kind of see where his recruitment goes. He goes LSU this weekend and then Tennessee next weekend. We'll see if the Vols can make another move for him because they were kind of the leader heading into his run of official visits.
Mike picks his guys that he really, really wants in the class. Is Onis Konanbanny one of those?
I think so. Maybe not like, there's certain guys where you just know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if it's to that degree, but you got to think, right? Like Florida State does an excellent job when they have, 10 to a dozen official visitors on campus. But imagine just being that center of attention the entire weekend for both Mike Norvell and his entire staff. I think Norvell's energy is just, palpable when interacting with these kids and their families, and Onis kind of responded to that well. Certain guys, I'm sure, he's not for everyone, and he'll be the first one to tell you that in Norvell. But certain guys just respond super well to it, and I think Onis is one of those kids. So yeah, I think, I don't know if he's like hallmarked as one of Norvell's guys, but maybe moving forward after that, OB he is.
Yeah, man, they did a great job. Bryce Fitzgerald. Talk about that prospect. Talk about his situation.
Yeah, he's a 4-star safety prospect out of Miami Columbus High School. And I think a lot of people, at least us, like going into the OV to FSU last weekend, we thought, it's got to be Miami, right? Miami Columbus High School. That's where Cristobal went, Mario Cristobal, and a lot of, Miami's boosters are, alumni of that school. They do a good job of recruiting the high caliber talent out of that program. Well, after both of his last visits, past 2 visits to FSU in Florida, he said that Miami's not in his top 3.
Will you buy that?
That's I'll get into that in a second. But FSU felt pretty good about where they stood. I know Florida feels really good about where they stand with Bryce Fitzgerald coming out of their OB this weekend. Miami gets the last visit. So I do think that Miami is going to make a surge, and I'm not going to discount that staff. They do a good job, like I said, in general in recruiting. And then obviously,
I guess.
Yeah. Obviously, like I said, with that school specifically, there's so many ties there. So we shall see what goes on. But but I found it interesting that he said FSU was in his top 2 coming out of the UF visit. I don't fully buy that Miami's not in the top 3 though. So interested to see just what we hear on that recruitment coming out of the Miami OB this upcoming weekend.
I know Florida State's always getting negatively recruited on, but I feel like a safety prospect. I don't know if playing to that Miami defense is really great for your draft stock based on some of the player caliber that they've had and what they've done, where they were projected to go and where they ended up. Yeah. And I don't know if that's our style or not, but I would maybe let Fitzgerald's people know about that. Running back prospect, Byron Louis. Is it Louis or Louise?
Louis.
Byron Louis. Oh, dude, I always want a French Canadian up their names. Byron Louis. All right, Byron Louis, guy that we felt really good about as like Florida State's. I feel like their top realistic running back target, if not their top overall target. Do we still feel good about Byron Louis?
Yes.
Oh no.
But
oh no.
There's a new team in the picture, and I think they're the most worrisome team just because it's Georgia, and Georgia got him in for an official visit this past weekend. It kind of came out of the blue. Like I think they whiffed on some kid that they were semi in on at the running back spot. They already have one committed in the class. Georgia does, and Byron Louis is the guy that they kind of circled as one they wanted to bring in. So like Georgia does, they just randomly hosted him for an official visit, got him on campus, and leaving the visit, it sounds like Georgia is trying to make him the second running back in their class. I still think FSU is in a good spot, especially considering they don't have a running back committed, and they've been in on Byron Louis for a longer period of time and done an excellent job in that recruitment. Within this calendar year, but it is Georgia. So that is something to watch. He visits FSU this upcoming weekend. I would guess it turns into a Georgia versus FSU battle. I think Miami's also in the picture. But yeah, coming before the Georgia visit, I felt really good about where things stood between Louis and FSU. But coming out of it, I'm just interested to see how that dynamic works.
Who do you think Georgia wants more, Louis or Ousmane Kroma?
I think it changes a lot.
It really does. The situation is so like it's my God. Sorry, Brendan. Trademark. It's very fluid about what's going on, right? Yeah. It's a lot of twists and turns.
I read something on our Georgia site. Ben Wolk does an awesome job there, and he posted today. He goes, "Would think this is the second running back I'll be paying closest attention to for now," and that's Byron Louis. I guess that indicates that maybe he's a higher priority than Ousmane Kroma, and maybe that's a good thing for Florida State as they try to close on Ousmane Kroma, who's also highly considering a school like Auburn.
Stay tuned. Very, 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 very important visit weekend coming up. All right, that's all of the intel for guys that have visited elsewhere. We've got some before we get to the top 5 names to know for the big visit weekend. Let's talk about, we got some midweek official visits, Zach. You want to run down this list? Who is visiting, and what's the possibility that any of these are going to end up in Florida State's class? I feel like there's some long shots in here, but I'll let you go down the list of names, explain, and give the expertise that only you can provide.
Yeah, so I think the most intriguing name by far is not even a 2025 recruit. It's a 2024 recruit. And he's a 6'10" offensive tackle. I think we talked about on the last podcast.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah. What an interesting situation. Wild, dude. Totally wild situation.
Exactly. So his whole journey starts, from the basketball realm of things. He's an overtime elite prospect, which is, essentially like a semi-pro league that pays guys, out of the high school ranks to go play there for that squad or that league. And he was there for a couple of years, was a solid, big man, but wanted to try his, make an attempt to play football. It's something that he grew up playing a little bit, but never really fully committed to. And now he is. After that elite camp at FSU last weekend that he competed in, he's blown up. He camped at UF. I think UF saw the footage that we were posting of him, called him and was like, hey, can you come camp? So he camped there. He camped at Georgia the day after, set up an OV to UF for this weekend. and then heads to FSU on Monday to start a multi-day official visit, and then goes Mississippi State, then Georgia, just back to back to back. And
what a circuit.
We'll close out his recruitment after that, because he's trying to enroll in the summer somewhere. He's trying to enroll within the next couple of weeks for the summer B session. This will be an interesting recruitment. He's 6'10", 300 plus pounds, super impressive frame, and just he's the type of kid that you don't see a lot of 6'10" human beings walking around that can move like he does, and I think that has a lot of these college offensive line coaches excited for the potential of him as he kind of gets accustomed to college football.
How old is he?
I think he's 20. I want to say he'd be coming in as a freshman, a true freshman. So
he'd still have 4 years of eligibility.
Correct, to my knowledge. I will say the one thing is, like, a lot of these schools are doing some research on his academic situation, getting credits transferred, all that stuff. That'll be part of the official visit with FSU. It sounded like they got a little bit more clarity on that, and that's why they felt good about bringing him in for an OV, but I don't know if it's fully squared away. So that'll be something to note there as they kind of make sure everything's good to go for him to enroll. And it's going to be a battle, right? If Georgia's in the mix and UF is also in the picture. But I mean, FSU will take their shot, and they were the first school to kind of let him take a shot at football with that elite camp, and he has some ties to the program with Pat Surtain. He said Pat Surtain tried to recruit him to play high school football for American Heritage in South Florida when he was heading into high school. So awesome. Surtain was doing some recruiting back then, and I think that'll be an interesting one to watch. I think it's the most interesting midweek OB in my opinion. But I can get into the rest of the guys.
Start getting into them. What do you think? What do you think about the rest of this crew of bros that we got coming to campus?
Yeah, I'll characterize them in two different categories, I guess. I think there's three long shots, and that's 5-star edge Jared Smith out of Alabama, 4-star defensive back Ben Hanks out of South Florida, Miami Booker T. Washington High School, and then Winston-Salem, North Carolina native, 4-star safety Jadon Blair. Those are the long shots, in my opinion. I think FSU is in the picture, but maybe not in that top group for any of those guys. I'm not trying to say that an official visit can't sway them. We saw last year it wasn't right away, but a guy like Kai Bates took a midweek official visit to FSU and committed to LSU that summer, but actually ended up flipping to FSU down the line. So not trying to say that an official visit to Florida State can't put them vault them up, because we've seen a lot of that a lot of those kind of developments happen in recruitments throughout the summer. But as of right now, heading into the OVs, I think that they're long shots for Florida State. And then there's another guy in a completely different category, and that's 3-star edge rusher out of Gainesville, Nicholas Clayton. He's a prospect that FSU watched in the spring. They set up an official visit with. FSU's kind of his top option. So different than the aforementioned prospects that have a bunch of top programs after him. I think Nicholas Clayton is like a Nebraska, UCF, that type of recruitment. So with him, I would characterize that as how hard does FSU push for him? Personally, I think he's a pretty good prospect. I've talked to multiple people that have evaluated him in the college football scouting industry, and they're high on him.
Is this the prospect that Chris isn't a massive fan of? Am I thinking of this the right guy, or is that McLeod?
I think McLeod is the one you're talking about. Yeah, this kid is out of Buchholz High School in Gainesville, Florida. 6'4.5", 205-pound edge. He's a 3-star in our rankings. Like I said, not a guy that has a ton of high-profile teams after him, but you would think if FSU pursues him heavily, they'd have a good chance to land him. But that is the question with him, right? So for me, I'm putting him into that category of does FSU kind of turn up the heat with Nick Clayton? I think they like him. And I think if he wanted in right now, they would probably take his commitment. But a lot of that depends on how much they prioritize him. moving forward. So I think the official visit will go a long way as they use that as an evaluation tool, like we've talked about before, as they learn more about the person rather than the football player with these prospects.
Would this be one of those situations like that 2026 DB, like he could get an offer commit to Florida State? Is he close to getting a University of Florida offer? Would a University of Florida offer like ultimately sway the kid? Is it like one of those situations?
I'm not sure of as to that dynamic. I mean, if he grew up in Gainesville, I would assume that, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that for sure. To be honest, I haven't dug a ton on his recruitment in general, but I
But he
know.
will after this midweek OV, you can
Yeah,
guarantee it.
yeah, exactly. But I know when FSU offered, I got positive returns as to what they thought of him as a prospect, and another part of their evaluation, like I said, will be this official visit. So interested to see kind of where things are at with both parties coming out of the trip.
It's just one of those things. Florida State is so good at evaluation that if
Yeah.
they do like offer this kid and get this kid, there will be more eyes on this prospect, and then we'll go from there. But hey, if you want to be a winning program like Florida State's been, you want to covet highly talented and prospects that other programs covet as well. Name of the game. Big weekend coming up, man. Big weekend, biggest of the year. Some really, really, really important names on this. We've spoken about one already. We talked about Josh Petty. I think we covered that situation in depth. Let's talk about some Florida State commits. And these aren't, I don't know if I'd say these are the most, I don't know if there's any really like solid, like rock solid commits in this class, that's another interesting dynamic in and of itself. But let's talk about 5-star offensive line prospect Solomon Thomas. This is a dude, from the answers that he gives in those interviews, he seems like the quintessential like Alex Atkins, Mike Norvell, like football mind. But he's looking as well he should. Very talented. What does Florida State need to do with Solomon Thomas, and what's like the status of his commitment right now to Florida State?
Yeah, I'm maybe not as worried as some other people when it comes to Solomon.
A lot of people are very worried.
Yeah. And that's not to say that he's not seriously considering a school like LSU or Florida. I just, from knowing the kind of behind the scenes of this recruitment, just, what Florida State's kind of already, displayed to him when it comes to just their recruiting pitch, as opposed to what other schools have put in front of him. Like, I feel good about FSU kind of having that last shot to impress him coming out of the summer. He says, in all of his recent interviews that he wants to have a final decision made, kind of after this FSU OV. And, I just, like you said, he's kind of that perfect fit for an Alex Atkins type along the offensive line. A guy that, they've been on for a very long time and genuinely, really likes Florida State. I think LSU is probably still the biggest threat to FSU here. And he's been candid about that. I visited him at his school in the spring, and he told me that. Went on an OV there, loved it. FSU has to nail it with this OV, and I think they will. I'm not overly worried, like I said, but like you said, his commitment, his recruitment's not shut down, so that always is a cause for some worry. But just how this recruitment's kind of set up with FSU getting the last crack at things makes me feel better about them holding on to Solomon Thomas.
I'm with you too, man. The way the just how insightful and thoughtful the kid is, it jives really well with the sales pitch, if you want to even call it that, that Mike and Alex throw at their kids. So yeah, I feel pretty good about it too, but you never know, man. You never know. This kid is highly coveted. Finally get to talk about some Brevard County action.
Let's go.
Defensive line commit Coco Tiger, Javian Hilson, a former Alabama commit, now a Florida State commit. People are coming after Javian heavy, as well they should. Best county in the state of Florida, in my uninformed opinion. 3, 2, 1, Countdown County. Love my Brevard guys. Love when Florida State's on some Brevard guys. What do we think, man? this guy has been under some heat, man. Alabama getting back into the picture. Who's the biggest threat right now for Javian? And do you see his commitment status in the same way that you spoke about Solomon Thomas's, or is it a little bit different?
I wouldn't say I'm worried, but I think Javian Hilson's more of a wild card in the sense that, like, just to put this in perspective, like how this recruitment's gone. So he commits, or I was told in last November, like heading into December, he was playing for a state championship game. He's going to commit to FSU after the game. So, I'm all, I kind of forgot about it, to be honest. But I'm all like semi-prepared for that.
Right.
There was a lot going on in December for, in the Florida State realm.
I don't even want, you want to talk about PTSD on the board, dude.
Exactly.
Bring up December 2023.
Yeah. So, well, after the game, I check my Twitter. Oh, it's an Alabama commitment. I'm like, okay, great. Edge recruiting starting off awesome.
Cool, dude. Walk with Pooches, baby.
Yeah. So, well, a month later, Nick Saban's out. And soon after that, I think, just probably a week after that, he flips his commitment to Florida State. I think that's where he wanted to go. He has some in his family, I think I've talked about before, that are big Alabama fans.
Yeah.
Well, I visit him. I went by, the 321, go by the school. Yeah. Talked to Javian and he said that Alabama was the biggest threat to FSU at that time. But then we see his official visit schedule. He heads to Florida, and then the second weekend of June, it's a visit. He's supposed to go to Alabama. Well, he then replaces that with the visit to Texas, and takes a visit to Austin, and all of a sudden the Longhorns and their Lamborghinis are, wowing him enough to make them the top contender to FSU. So to answer your question, I think it's Texas right now, but like I said, it's a freaking wild card with Javian Hilson's recruitment. It's hard to kind of predict what's next. I do feel great about his interest level in Florida State. Like I don't think that's changed. If anything, it's gotten better. They got him on campus this past week for their big man camp, and I thought that was big to kind of stem the Longhorns' momentum after
absolutely smart tactical visit even before his official visit. I like to see that sort of stuff, especially out of the edge department.
Agreed. I thought that was really well played move for FSU. But yeah, he visited UCF this weekend, and I know, like, I actually heard like they could be a possible threat, just because I think he has family that live, that's obviously not far from Cocoa, and he has family that lives in Orlando. So, they're a school to watch, I guess. But I'm viewing more so Texas as a threat, at least as of right now, right? Like this could change by tomorrow, but yeah, he visits this upcoming weekend, and you got to feel great, because I mean, for what you can with this recruitment, because I'm sure it's not going to end in the summer. He says it's going to. He says he's making a final decision after his FSU OV. We all know that's probably not going to happen when it comes to shutting things down. But if you can leave summer with Javian Hilson committed, I think that's a pretty positive sign for FSU as they try to hold on to him for the rest of the cycle.
I want to walk with Papuchis. I want to keep walking with Papuchis. I want to keep doing it. And just one suggestion, don't let Brendan interview him after the official visit. I don't want any of that weird UCF Golden Knight 2017 fake natty bias. Like, Brendan can't help it. You guys have done a good job of like converting him to the FSU side. He was super mad about the snub. He's got like a blood feud with like all Miami fans, which is awesome. I really love that. The UCF crap, it exudes out of his pores like pheromones. Just keep him away from Javian. You handle Brevard, dude. You got the Brevard vibe.
I'll get you on a FaceTime call, and you can do the interview. All right.
Well, if we really want this recruitment to go in the crapper, that's a really great suggestion. All right, uncommitted guys now. Myron Charles, defensive lineman. This dude has been consistently at the top of your top 10 most wanted recruits, I think, up until last week when the whole Josh Petty thing came into light.
Yeah.
But this dude is of the utmost importance for Florida State, a team that on the interior of the defensive line, it's been an interesting ride in the recruiting section over the past couple years. What do we think about Mr. Myron? And what's his timeline as well?
Yeah, so he's been, he's taken his fair share of official visits over the course of June. I think Texas or Florida and Miami, and all those schools have made solid impressions. But
Set the
um,
bar.
yeah,
Set
they
the
all
bar.
set the bar one after another. But yeah, I think FSU heading into those OVs, I felt really really good about Florida State's chances for Myron Charles. I still feel pretty good. Obviously OVs are going to wow kids, and I think that's the case for Myron Charles. But I just feel good about him getting back around the coaching staff, Coach Odo Hagens, Coach Mike Norvell. He loves those guys. Getting back around them for this official visit this upcoming weekend just makes me feel like FSU has a good chance to close this one out. I think he'll decide next month in the month of July. Not sure an exact date or anything at this point, but I'm sure we'll figure out, get more clarity on that, talking to him exiting the OB. But yeah, still like my crystal ball at this point for FSU with Myron Charles.
I like it too, Zach. All right, last prospect we're going to talk about. Linebacker prospect, Tavian Wallace. Could this be like the redemption arc of defensive, like non-defensive back recruiting? Because they are on some really good prospects at every level, interior defensive line, edge. The linebacker recruiting, I think, has been a nice uptick. We're about to end this episode, so I don't know if I want to get you going on it, but what do you think? What do you think about what's going on at linebacker? What do you think about Tavian Wallace? What do you think about FSU's chances?
Yeah, man, they've set up a nice board. I will say it's just I was talking to someone about this today. Like, you got to capitalize on this year at linebacker because it's a rare, really, really good year at linebacker, especially in Florida State's region, in the state of Florida and in Georgia.
Absolutely.
On that note, Georgia's, I think their top, ranked linebacker in the state. I think Zayden Walker is right there too, the Georgia commit. But Tavion Wallace is an absolute freak of a prospect. 6'1", 215 pounds. His older brother just got drafted in the NFL in the 2024 NFL draft by the Carolina Panthers. As a linebacker prospect, he ran a 10.61 in the 100. He's just a freak. And I think FSU is just all in on this. I actually had an interesting note that I'll probably share on the site this week, but you guys get it first.
This is good. I don't even know it. Tell me. It wasn't on the script. Tell
Yeah.
me.
So I was told that Rainey Shannon is covering all of his bases with this recruitment. I think he's actually in contact with Tavion's older brother, Trevin, who played at Kentucky. And Kentucky's not really in the mix for Tavion Wallace, the younger brother. But I think Rainey's been doing a good job at kind of bringing the older brother and on Florida State side of this process. And another guy I want to note that's been involved for an FSU sake in recruiting Tavion Wallace is off-field assistant Carter Barfield, who recruited that area when he was at Mercer, and he's done a good job at kind of setting Florida State up earlier on in this recruitment. But yeah, this is a massively important weekend when it comes to Florida State's chances with Tavion Wallace. It feels like every visit he takes, he's comparing what they accomplished on the visit to what FSU's kind of all the work they've put in to recruiting him over the past however many years they've been involved in his process. And they have been that most consistent school that's been there for the long term. He's mentioned that time and time again. I answered a crystal ball for Florida State with Tavion Wallace all the way back in February. I still feel good about that. It's going to be a tough recruitment to win. Like, Georgia is all in on Tavion Wallace. He's from the state of Georgia. Like, this is one of their guys. Like, they want to land him. So does Florida. He grew up a Florida fan. His dad's a diehard Florida fan. Like, there are tough dynamics to this recruitment. But I think if there's a must-win recruitment this cycle, like, considering, I'm not going to get into it, I swear, considering the history
Man,
at
look at this
recruiting this
restraint. I'm
position.
so proud of you right now, dude.
Thank you.
Subscribe on YouTube so you can see the temporal like artery veins in his like head bulging right now.
Yeah. No, it's all good. But considering the history, this feels like a recruitment you have to win. You've been invested for so long. You get the last visit. You've seen all these other schools make their push. It's time for you to kind of go and close the deal. And right now I feel good about FSU's chances of doing that. With obviously what I said, like there are tough dynamics to winning this recruitment.
I sold me, man. That's a lot of stuff up against Florida State's favor, but you're William Wallace, dude. You're holding the line, diamond hands on that crystal ball, huh, big guy?
Yeah. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I think right now I'm gonna roll with the Noles and see if Randy Shannon has a little redemption arc.
Zach's rolling with Randy. Zach's rolling with the Noles. We hope you guys will continue to roll with us here at Noles247.com. What a ton of information. A ton of information. You guys have just been, you're spoiled. You're spoiled little babies, but we love you. And we're going to keep giving you all this information, whether you deserve it or not. But you do, because you're the best. Best listenership, best fans, most informed. Stick with us here at Noles247.com. You know exactly what happened last week. You know what's going to happen during the middle of this week, and you were set up so good. Best preview man in the business, Zach Blostein. But to know what happens after the fact, as we've said multiple times, recruiting can change on an instant. You got to be on Noles247.com subscriber to see all the twists and turns in real time. Zach will keep you informed. Brendan, Chris, Brett, Adam, Kevin, Dane, Clay. My God, it's the Avengers. It's the Avengers of FSU Noles infotainment. And I'm just proud to be a remora fish on the belly of this great white shark, my friend. I had a blast. I'm informed. For Zach Blostein, I am Trey Rowland. Thank you for sticking with us. Keep chopping.